So, it's fair to say that the world has changed an awful lot, and digital is very much accelerating this change, and that's, I think, true across multiple media, but particularly in photography. So, how can photographers differentiate themselves and their work in today's mixed media world? Eddie?
Right. It's always changing every day. Every day I wake up, there's something new happening, something new thrown at us. It's been a challenge. I mean, I've gone through film. Originally before that, I was in a band. I was listening to Richard earlier on. It was really interesting what he was saying, how things have changed, how I saw the music industry change, and that was pretty drastic. It went from just analog to digital, and then it was CD, downloads. People might remember cassettes. And the same's happening with our industry now. It's changing, and everything's becoming social media attractive. And all my clients said we want to attack on so many different levels. And so we're having to relearn the code. We have to come back and start again. And so every day it's something new. So I'm actually enjoying it because it keeps you on your toes.
What's the main sort of thrust of your work as a photographer?
I mainly do sports and clothing advertising. Okay. So I sort of work to a brief, and I have to go with the challenges that go with that. Trying to keep everyone happy.
Now, Nick, as we saw earlier on in that captivating presentation of yours, you've been in the business, it's fair to say, for a while. Now, this challenge that we're talking about keeping ourselves relevant, about embracing new technologies, do you think that it's difficult or a challenge to... this comes across the wrong way, I apologise, but to teach an old dog new tricks. If we are established in what we do, how much of a challenge do you find it to embrace these new technologies and new ways of working?
Well, I think the important thing is that technology is there to help us, not the other way around. So I think if you've got the material, what's really important today is to be up to date with the technology, because you do still continuously need to market yourself, because the challenge is there because there are so many of you out there doing this type of work. So you need to be always at the cutting edge, but I think very importantly, you have to have, you know, the voice. You have to, if you go back to music, nowadays, just having a good score isn't enough. You've got to be able to sing from that score, and it works both ways. So I think that's very important. We have to keep abreast, but you have to have the material so that the technology is useful to you.
Okay. Now, one of the key things that we're talking about today with Creative Cloud is about the collaboration. And how important do you think it is as a photographer to be able to share your portfolio and collaborate and get feedback from fellow professionals?
It's essential.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't turn a blind eye to it. In a funny kind of way, a lot of artists or a lot of photographers, a lot of anybody who's creative is very sensitive about their own material. To be judged, it's like when you're back in university, people give you crits about your work, and you're very defensive. But I think in this day and age, you've got to be bold enough to be able to put your work forward and then take back and maybe learn from it as well, because obviously, you've got such a strict view of your own material. Sometimes it's nice to have that feedback, and you can discard it if you don't believe it, but if it's creative and it moves you forward, then by all means, it's a good medium.
Nick, do you share much of your stuff?
I do share my stuff, and it's fantastic. One of the tools, either traditionally in Photoshop, contact sheets, or in Lightroom. There's ways to do that as well now, and it's great prior to showing it to the client. I'm very fortunate I can send it to picture editors who aren't the client, or I can send it to fellow photographers, and the feedback is important because people have very little time to look at your work, so you really want to hit them straight away. And so again, this technology is fantastic for making sure that the editor who sees your work, who's going to commission this, it just hits them straight away. They don't have time to kind of delve into endless pictures. So the editing and all of this is very, very important to remaining at the top of the profession.
So, I mean, we've been hinting about social media and about, this is 2013, social media is all about sharing. And something that's happened only over the last few days, and it's something that we actually haven't talked about yet, but I think it was on Friday, there was a story that broke about the Chicago Sun-Times that I don't know if anyone heard, but it sacked all 28, I think, of its professional full-time photography staff, citing, I forget the exact words, I did write them down, citing a rapidly changing business, readers seeking more video content with their news. It's quite a big deal, and I kind of wonder how long it's going to be before we start seeing similar moves over here. You know, newspapers wanting more, let's say, well, digital newspapers, online publications saying, a still image isn't enough anymore, we need video.
It's already the case. I mean, the New York Times for years now has been using video. And I think what's difficult is that, and you could take this for BBC journalists, for example, not only do they have to write their report, they've got to send it out on the radio, they've got, I see lots of people nodding, you know, they've got to do a blog, it goes on and on. So I think what suffers potentially is the quality. We have the tools to provide all of this information, but I worry about the quality of the delivery, the deliverables, because all of you, I think, here know where your skills are. And so when it becomes across all these different platforms, you simply don't have the time to fully utilize your best skills because you have all of these other demands. I think there's a danger there as well.
It's also very political. I mean, if it comes over here, then there's already attack on the newsstand as we know it in the UK as it is. The newsstand is probably its hardest element at the moment. So if people start taking photographers out and people just throw images in, you know, because it's a moment of opportunity to do that, and we've seen that recently with Woolwich, then it will affect the whole industry. And the industry is in that state of flux at the moment. A lot of everything is going to go online, and lots of people are going to go downloads and iPad downloads for their magazines and their reading thing. But personally, I think still the still image has a really important place in our society, and the time to focus on that, to me, I still like reading the Metro, which is, you know, I don't know, it still holds me, and that time you can sort of ponder on an image.
But in terms, you mentioned the recent things that happened over in Woolwich and news coverage in particular, and we're seeing an awful lot of video footage as well as still photography footage appearing online and in print as well. That's social media based. It's people who happen to have an iPhone at an event, and I think of Mark Stone, the Sky News journalist who was in Clapham while people were looting during the riots a couple of years ago. Now, that was being shot on a wobbly iPhone. The quality wasn't there, but it was good enough to fit the context of the reporting. So to what extent are we, you know, we can create wonderful, beautiful photographs, wonderfully composed and stuff, but in a news context, is good enough good enough?
I think there are different horses for different courses. You know, the 7/7 news beast will take everything. You know, if you're at the right place at the right time, those images are going to be used. And you're asked, you know, I mean, the BBC, to go back to them again, ask, you know, if you were there, would you please send us your eyewitness account or the images? But I think if we go back to 7/7, the terrible incident that happened a while ago, if we go back to the Twin Towers, the telling images that are still with us were taken by professional photographers. They weren't the ones in the London Tube that were there, the people who were actually in the tube when the bombs went off. I think that's the difference. So actuality, you can't beat the fact that someone is there, however poor the quality is. But I think if we look back at images that really speak to us, they tend, not always, they tend to be by professional photographers, and there are always exceptions.
I think of 9/11, and there was a really beautiful, sounds like the wrong word entirely, but it was a black and white image of people looking at what was happening. And I think it's quite famous. And it's just people's faces aghast at what's unfolding in front of them. But this was taken in 2001. And I can't help but thinking if that same image were to take place today, everyone, or practically every other person in there, would have their phone and would be filming it themselves. Whereas in that image from 2001, there wasn't a single camera phone in that image. And I think what you're saying to me is that different quality of images have different time spans, different lifespans almost.
Totally. I think, you know, and I think the tragedy maybe is that we're not sending the top photographers into these really difficult areas of the world because of the cost, because of insurance and all sorts of other elements. But when you go back and you look at the pictures that have been taken, there's an example now that all of you will be able to see Salgado's work at the National History Museum. I mean, the new work is digital. Photoshop has been used. Huge amounts have gone into it. But when you look at the quality of those pictures, I defy anyone to be able to produce that by just showing up at a place with the top equipment that you can purchase today. He has an eye, he uses the technology, and all the way down the line, that's being used to produce something that is really, I would say, unique. It's a unique voice, and sadly, unfortunately, because of budgets, etc., maybe we're not getting the kind of stories that we should be getting because of these constraints that are beyond the kind of visual dimension.
So, I mean, we've focused on news quite a lot there as well, but that's something that's very immediate to us. We all consume news one way or another, but I guess advertising content as well is something that we consume whether we like it or not. You mentioned budgets. Is there an extent to which you feel as though budgets are being pulled back these days, and is that inhibiting the creative work that you're able to do?
It definitely does. I think as well, I think budgets are realistic. You know, I mean, people nowadays have got so much spend, and then they want to spend it as wisely and as creatively as possible. And so, again, it's down to the photographer to come back with more creative ways of doing something. Maybe you have a smaller crew, but at the same time, you're still being able to deliver something that excites people and challenges people. Because the thing about advertising, it always takes people to somewhere else. It's maybe, don't know, it's inspiring, or it's creative, it's imaginative. You know, it's sexy, it's something that's new, but people want it. And as human beings, we always want the latest gadgets. We always want to be in the best beaches. We always want to be, somewhere else up in space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who knows? But it's still about selling. And in a way, photography, we actually try and excite people through that, give them the imagery that will give them the tools to go out and get those things.
I guess, and you're right, I think it's probably very easy to look down on advertising and commercial photography as maybe less of an art form than news photography or actuality, but actually you've got to be a lot more creative given the constraints that you have.
It is. A lot of it is stress management because I don't know if you like
I have to say that the Rio pictures you saw were as stressful as going into a war zone. With the creative director there saying you've got to get this picture, or you saw the woman diving. I think, if I can interrupt there, I think what's so exciting today is that so much is teamwork. It's not just about the photographer. The design, I love working with designers when it comes to the book aspect or the website. It is a creative and team process. I think it's very hard. It goes back to this idea of you should be doing the film at the same time as the photography and the audio. I think the more that you can work with people who really know their particular field, it becomes really exciting. I can't design the way that designers I work with.
And it also goes to retouchers as well. I mean, there's probably retouchers out there today. I mean,
Retouch?
Retouch. I'm sorry. In our little world, we do. Take those little blemishes out, shall we say. But it's people should be recognised. And, when Photoshop came along, it gave us those tools to play with. But at the same time, it's again how you use them. And I know there's also been a great debate of how far you should go with retouching. Yes, and it will remain. I wanted to go back to one thing you said earlier about the journalism, and like yourself, the one thing that has got social media, it's probably in a bit of an uproar, is trusting. Can you trust the image? If you've got someone like Nick who puts his name to it, you can trust it. You know where it's come from. And that's the one thing I also think about the idea of just sending in a photo. I think is a spontaneous moment. Is it real? Is it the truth? Or is it something else?
When we had the Creative Week last year, we had a whole hour-long debate dedicated to issues around photoshopping, and I guess not many products have turned themselves into a verb one way or another, and there's some positive and negative connotations, but Glyn, who sat here on the front row today, we had a very lively debate about the ethics around editing images. But one of the things that came up, actually, and I want to put this to you probably as our last question for now, is, we can Photoshop, we can edit something out of a picture. And as we saw Richard do earlier on, that's actually very easy with, the later versions of the software. But you still have an awful lot of control with regards to how you frame your shots. you can tell a story, you can manipulate just by the direction in which you point your lens. Do you feel a responsibility and a power in what you do? I mean, I guess news is one angle, but commercials another. And how do you sort of manage that responsibility?
Well, I mean, I never, almost never, ever crop an image. So it goes back to this trustworthiness. I think that I'm trying to do as much as I can in camera. For me, Photoshop and the elements that come after that are important. Important insofar as it's like going back to the darkroom for me. Dodging, burning, those tools are extraordinary because, you know, if you were in the lab, you were doing all sorts of kind of acrobatic. Now you can just sit at the screen, you can remove the layer, bring it back. So it's helped us. But in terms of what I'm trying to do and what you're saying, that the authenticity, it has to stay. It absolutely, I mean, I always listen to Richard and I think, oh, wow, if I could do this, if I could only move that. But if it doesn't happen, as it were, out there in the field, I can't then do it later on in the Photoshop realm, as it were.
Certainly, I mean, I work a lot in video. The dreaded words, we'll correct it in post.
No!
But advertising is different. I mean,
in the mix, as you say, in music, but you're right. I mean, often the way I often shoot knowing that what I'm going to do later on, where we're going to drop a background in. Because basically, I work in Britain, I work outdoors in Britain. It's the most temperamental country in the world to work in. Anybody else out here does it? It drives me insane. I go to work stressed, and I'm thinking, right, because I just want to enjoy my day. I love doing what I do, but I want to enjoy it. But the weather really is my biggest friend and enemy at times. And so Photoshop to me has become that tool that will probably get me, it's a bit of a get out of jail card. But I still know that I'm limited, so we both have to work within camera, and with me with lighting, because obviously my work is all about lighting. And it's tough. But luckily we have got the tools to help us when the situations are against us.
Terrific. Well, I'm really sorry that's all we've got time to talk about now. But we will be continuing the conversation online, as a lot of you have been doing. I'm seeing them all flying past on here. Creative Days is the hashtag, so please do keep on popping up with your thoughts and questions. We'll be having some more discussions throughout the afternoon. But for now, on stage, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm thank you to Nick Danziger and Eddie MacDonald. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir. Very good. Thank you.